welcome both of you to being here. We wanted to know, a little bit more of your department and your role and what do you do for the community so the community can know who you are and what is the role that you play in our community.
Yeah, great to talk about it. So we are the municipal police department for the city of Hillsboro, and we serve what we call our jurisdiction, which is the city of Hillsboro. We provide public safety, collect property from folks that, sometimes it gets abandoned, sometimes we're recovering stolen property. We try and reunite people when they're victims of the crime with either the things that have been taken from them, or we put them in contact with the governmental services that help get them justice. We also respond to calls for emergency. My job as the chief of police is to set the mission of the police department and ensure that the police department is accountable to the laws, and importantly, in circumstances that we're talking about right now, is that we police Hillsboro the way that the citizenry and the people that work and live there want. So we try and strike a similar tone to the way Hillsboro is governed, which is welcoming and inclusive.
Now, Kevin Barton, for the third time here in Elemento Latino, can you share with us what is your role? I know we have discussed this in the past, but we would like to, get the word out there and more people to know you now that we're going to be in Telemundo as well.
That's right, and I love being back. Thank you for having me. Well, I'm the district attorney, and what that means is I lead an office of about 130 people, and we work in the court system, and our primary duty is to help make sure people who live and work and raise families in our community are safe. So safety is the key goal of what we do every single day. That means working with police departments like Hillsboro's police department, but all the different police departments throughout Washington County, and working in the court system so that when someone commits a crime, we can hold that person accountable. So that when someone is a victim of a crime, we can help them get the justice that they deserve, or that when someone is a witness to a crime, that we can help them through the court process so that we can get to a good result. But at the end of the day, it's all about keeping our community safe.
Well, thank you for sharing that. It's always important to know who is representing us, and the work that you are doing, it's very important and crucial to keep our community safe. But now I would like to talk about sanctuary state. So Oregon State is considered a sanctuary state. In the simpler terms, what does this mean?
From a perspective of the police department, what it means is that we do not engage in federal immigration law enforcement. What that means literally day in and day out for our officers is we don't investigate crimes related to immigration, and we don't conduct our own sweeps or any kind of enforcement actions along that. Oregon state law prohibits that from police departments. We follow it strictly, so we have policies against it, and we simply enforce the criminal code for the state of Oregon and some municipal laws in the city of Hillsboro. We're completely detached from immigration enforcement.
I agree with everything that Chief Coleman said. Really, safety is about two things, in my opinion. It's about being safe and feeling safe. Mm-hmm. And those are actually two different things. If you're safe, but you don't feel safe, then that can really impact your quality of life.
Right.
You need to feel safe when you're driving down the street, when you're dropping your kids off at school, when you're riding Max to work. But you also need to feel safe if you have to call 911. Or if you have to go to the courthouse, because you need to be able to access those services that anyone in our community has a right to access. It's a civil right to be able to get the help that you need. And whether it's the Hillsboro Police Department or the Washington County DA's office, we want people to feel safe when they call and get those services so that we can help protect them, their family, and the community.
Is this law optional or mandatory for the police department and or the district attorney office to comply with?
It is mandatory. There is Oregon state law which outlines what our responsibilities are and prohibits certain actions by police. So we also find it though, in regard to the law, that it's important for us to know what's going on in our community, because so much of law enforcement is to proactively prevent crime. And if people don't feel comfortable reporting crime, then we really have no idea where it's happening, what the types are, and no way of making the victims whole again. So it's not only that it's mandatory under the law, it makes functioning otherwise very difficult if people are reluctant to come forward, if they fear that there's something outside of just our providing public safety that they have to be in fear of.
How does the police department and the DA's office enforcing this law?
Yeah, well, the first thing is it's not just a law that we have to follow, it's a law we want to follow because it makes doing the work that we do, keeping the community safe, so much easier so that people can focus on getting the help they need when they need to call the police or come to the courthouse and work with the district attorney. So we want to follow it, but we also want people to know that if they see the law not being followed, there's a way they can report that anonymously so that everyone throughout all of our state follows this law because it's a good thing. And so there's a 1-800 number and a hotline that people can call if they see a police department or the court system not doing what it ought to be doing.
Let me ask you one question. What assurance can you give to the community so they know that your department is not cooperating with ICE?
Well, I can tell you, Veronica, that we haven't participated in immigration enforcement activities. We don't currently, and it would take a very monumental ruling or change of law in the state of Oregon for us to ever do it. We don't have a history of it. We don't practice it currently. I don't see it happening in the future. We explicitly lay out in our policy what officers are prohibited from doing, and those include very specific details such as we do not pass along names, addresses, that includes places where people work, the hours that they work, where they go to school or where their children go to school. We don't pass along any kind of utility information. Anything that we might collect while we're trying to help solve a crime, or perhaps in the wake of like a traffic accident, when we're trying to help people navigate what happens in the wake of that. All the information we collect is strictly to do the things that the city of Hillsboro wants to do for folks that have called for public safety services. There's no interface, and it's specifically lined out that as far as information being passed on to the Department of Homeland Security or any kind of immigration enforcement.
A police officer will ask for information to that person. Sometimes, I don't know if you feel that, but our community, Latin community, sometimes they struggle with the language. They might not have a driver's license or valid driver's license, and they're very afraid to talk to the police. What are the measures that you are taking to make sure that that person feels safe and feel comfortable sharing that information?
Yeah, really the key to that is an explanation by the officers that they come in contact with as to why we do need the information from them in the wake of or while we're conducting a traffic stop. So traffic stops are always supposed to be related to traffic safety. And in Hillsboro, 70% of the time we pull over a car for a traffic stop, it's just to educate the individual. Part of education is verifying that they have things which the state of Oregon requires a driver to have. If you don't have the three primary things that it requires, a driver's license, insurance, and registration, you may receive a citation, so you can get that fixed. But that's the extent of it. It's for safe drivers, safe cars, and to make sure we all have protections from maybe something that wasn't our fault happening to us. Those are our core goals: education and making sure the road is safe.
So Kevin, same question. How would you ensure to the community that you are not cooperating with ICE, especially when you are in the courthouse working with judges and more crimes?
Absolutely. So our priority really is prosecuting people who commit crimes, things like stealing cars, shoplifting, assaults, domestic violence, those types of crimes. We prosecute those criminals, and it's helping out the victims of those crimes to make the community safe. We have nothing to do whatsoever with enforcing immigration laws. We're not involved in that at all, don't want to be involved in that at all. That is not something that a district attorney in Oregon does, period.
Chief Coleman, would you share with us in what ways is your department investing in the community public education?
Yeah, I mentioned earlier that one of my jobs is to set the mission of the police department. So by mission, we just mean what are we focused on? What do we tell our officers and our employees are most important to us? And that mission right now is to provide exceptional police service. So you can say it, but if you really mean it, you have to raise the bar on not just standard or good enough, but to make Hillsboro an example of how you reach out to communities that maybe haven't had the closest relationship with law enforcement in the past, or don't exactly understand how it works, what the process is, what's an emergency, what's not. So to make it exceptional at Hillsboro, we've invested people like a specialist, Earlene Ryman, who's been in the community for many, many years, to kind of bridge a gap of trust, and teamed her up with an officer who has both cultural and language understanding, grew up in the culture, Ernesto Villarrealdo, and that's our bridge to say, hey, we want to do better, and how can we do better? What are the things you experience as hurdles when you interact with an officer that maybe doesn't have that background? And over the course of about 2 years now, where we've been working on that, is we've just recently trained every officer in the department about the things we've learned as Arlene and Ernesto have gone out in the community, bring it back to our officers and say things like, it's really important, almost no matter how busy you are, unless it's life and death, to go in to the business or make contact with the person that called in and say thank you for calling, you did the right thing, answer any questions they may have. And then also for officers to know that they have resources inside the police department if they feel like it wasn't a good connection, maybe there was a language barrier, or maybe there's a feeling of misunderstanding when they left, that they didn't get a good resolution, that we then have follow-on services where people who are better equipped can go and follow up and make sure people understand what's happening, make sure we didn't miss anything, have the relationship be at a good place. We want to emphasize when people put trust in us and there's good outcomes, that's how we keep it moving forward.
Right, and I have seen the great work of a few police officers that speak Spanish, and it's nice that we as Latinos can talk to other police officers that are Spanish speaking. So there is no barriers right there. We can communicate, and I think that's very important, and thank you for doing that.
If I could just add, we have hired a number of bilingual officers in the last couple of years, and our in languages, both English, Spanish, and in other languages. And our ability to communicate is at a level that it's never been before. We need to continue to make that even better, but we're far more equipped to bridge language gaps now than we ever have been before.
That is awesome. So, District Attorney Kevin, what are the things that you are doing in your department? I know you work with a lot of domestic violence families, and sometimes the resources, you have a very great way to help these families, but at the same time, how are you communicating with the Latino community to do that engagement and to kind of tell them, hey, here's the resources, come and basically call us when you have when you are in this type of situation, domestic violence situation?
It's an excellent question, and I think the thing I'd say to begin with is everyone who works in my office, just like everyone who works in the Hillsboro Police Department, wants to help. All of us came to this job not just to have a job to do, but because we wanted to give back to the community. And we know with crime that there's a certain amount of crime that happens, and domestic violence is a really good example of this, where there's more that is happening than we know about. And so the first step is encouraging people to report it, encouraging people to pick up the phone, to call, to seek out help, because if we don't know about it, we can't help people. When people do pick up the phone and call, when they do come to my office or Chief Coleman's office, we want to make sure that we're doing everything we can to help them in the best way. So One of the best examples I can give is we have a number of people who are not just bilingual but bicultural, who work in our office, who can meet people where they are, speak to them in their native language, and not just Spanish, but a number of people who can speak Spanish and who have grown up in that community, who understand more than I would understand to make people feel welcomed. We have over 12,000 victims who come in our doors every year to the DA's office from the community, and we want to make sure that we can see every victim who has a need, whatever it might be. So part of it is being welcoming when people come to us, but part of it also is having people in our office go out in the community to encourage people to come. So examples would be what I'm doing right now with you, reaching out to your viewers, encouraging them to call and to see who the chief is and who the DA is. Going into the schools, we sponsored a mock trial program for young high school students at Hill High, many of whom are Latino, who might want to go to law school and become lawyers down the road, and let them know this is possible for you too. It includes going to different community groups, being on social media, doing outreach efforts so that people can see who the district attorney is and who works in the DA's office, so that we can encourage more people to call and report a crime if they happen to be a victim and get the help that they might need.
Great. We were talking about all these great resources that you bring to the community, but from here in the future, how do you see each department investing in different languages and putting that in the budget?
In the police department, we divide the work into things that we call divisions. And in most police departments, you will find a patrol division, which are the officers you see on the streets, and then an investigations division. They're the major ones, and the investigators follow up on the major crimes that happen, and they're the ones that are in closest communication with the district attorney's office. In our department, we recently created another division, and it's about community outreach. And we really put extra resources, particularly into small businesses and minority community outreach. So one example of that, in what you talked about resources, Veronica, we recently had a job come open that had been doing one thing in the police department for many, many years. And we thought, what's our best investment? Is it still to do that thing? Or could we use it for something else? So we decided that a better investment now, to again reach our mission, is we've changed that position into a court-certified Spanish language interpreter. We continually find hurdles when people are willing to come in. We want to make sure that they're comfortable with somebody that can interpret for them when police are asking technical questions and difficult questions. And in turn, we need somebody who can be recognized by the court, so when the district attorneys, deputy attorneys need to use them for testimony and to verify things, that they can't be attacked for not understanding the language completely or misinterpreting something. We believe right now we'll be the only police department in the state of Oregon that has that service and that capability. Well, I hope that we're the forebearers of it and it becomes more commonplace because we have success with it. But that's just an example of not just asking for more resources, but taking an existing resource and saying, where could it be most impactful today?
Karen Barton, so like we mentioned, you want to do that outreach out there, and you have a huge umbrella called Family Justice Center.
That's right.
But you see yourself, or as a Washington County, putting more budget into that program, or other programs that you might have?
Well, so the Family Justice Center is separate from the DA's office and separate from the Hillsboro Police Department, but it works alongside. So it's one place that anyone who is in need of help, who's a victim of domestic violence, can go and get services. And sometimes that might be police services, but sometimes it might just be something as simple as talking to a therapist or talking to a counselor to see what your options might be if you're living in an abusive situation. It might mean that you need a new place to sleep or to live, or you need to change the locks on your doors if you don't feel safe where you are, or to get a restraining order in court. And so the beauty of the Family Justice Center is it's a place that the person who needs help can go, and they can decide how much or how little help they want to have, and know what all their options are. They can go there one time or more than one time. And it's working with groups like the Family Justice Center that really make our organizations more powerful, because we know we can't do it by ourselves, and we can only do it with the community and through the community, and that's the best way to make a strong, stable, and safe community.
I think your question about the Family Justice Center is fantastic, in the sense that, you know, not everything requires a police officer to go there, and what the Family Justice Center is kind of a trailblazer on is gathering together, enveloping a lot of services that can make people feel comfortable, that they have advocacy, that they have the criminal justice system on their side. Mm-hmm. And what we find is there's a very intense contact with the criminal justice system in the beginning, and then it goes quiet. And it's particularly concerning when we have victims of domestic violence, and that we keep that contact, that there's a relationship built. So we've been a partner with the Family Justice Center from day one. We continue to be a full partner, and then we do things inside the police department, like our victim advocate outreach with domestic violence, where we have so many, I think we're up to 46 right now, community members from all parts of the community in Hillsboro that they're not police officers. We don't even pay them. They volunteer to go out and help people get through that time after the crisis. But when it's so important that they show up for court and that they follow through on the things that will ultimately protect them and their families in the future.
Well, thank you so much to both for coming here to Elemento Latino. Great information, great resources, and thank you for the hard work that you're doing. Is there anything else that you would like to share?
And I think what I'd like to say is, for your viewers especially, there's a lot of information out there on the internet, on TV. Some of it's good, some of it's bad. Mm-hmm. Some of it's accurate, some of it's not accurate.
Correct.
And it's important for people to try and understand what's happening here. Because the way things work in some parts of our country is not the way it works here in Washington County. In Washington County, you've got police chiefs and DAs that work together. We don't work with ICE, we don't enforce immigration law. Our goal is simply to keep people safe. And that's very different than other parts of the country. And we do it by holding people accountable who commit crime, by arresting and prosecuting criminals who commit crime, by helping out community members who need the help, and doing it in a way always with an eye toward home safety. And that's what made our community such a great place to live in.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you for the information. Thank you for being here. And well,
para quienes aman, cuidan y hacen de Oregon su hogar. Elemento Latino cada sábado a las 11 de la mañana por Telemundo Portland. Elemento Latino es una producción de ICG.